the transcription just started so that we can share this on our website. So let's go ahead and get started. I will walk through some of the important details about the grant program, and then I'll open it up for questions for those of you that might have them, or if you're thinking about applying. So just a couple of housekeeping. There's just so few of you on the call, but go ahead and just keep your line muted if you're in a noisy place. If you want to ask a question, please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. I am doing this info session by myself, so I'm not really monitoring the chat, so it's best to just go ahead and unmute yourself. I did go ahead and already hit the record button, so this will be a publicly available recording, and so please just remember that as we are here to have a productive discussion about the Farm to School grant. And if we go past an hour, which is what we have allotted for this info session, I will stay on if there are specific project questions or if you're trying to work through something in your application. Okay, this is just a timetable of what all the program sort of important dates are and how decisions will be made. So, first off, all of the application materials are on the ODA website. This is the short URL here. You can type in ODA./
I'm so sorry. It may be me, but I don't see the presentation anymore since you started recording.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. Can you all see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. So, as I was just saying, this is the timetable for the grant program. So, all of the materials can be found to apply for this grant here on the left-hand side at this address, oda.direct/F2S. So all the materials are up on our website. I'll go over those here in a few minutes, but that is where you will find everything you need to apply for this grant. This is just a timetable here of sort of what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks or so. So the RFA is open. It is on our website. It is posted there. Today we're having an information session where you can ask questions about your proposals or get more information about the grant. We also have an office hour available on March 9th. That's from 9 to 10. So as you start working on your proposals and you run into challenges or questions, you can join that office hour and ask your questions. You can also just send an email to me, and we can set up a time to talk if you do need more assistance. The applications do close March 31st. All applications need to be received by 5 p.m. that day, and go over that a little bit today too. So, and then we'll screen applications for those that are eligible by April 6th. And then there will be a grant evaluation committee that will have those applications for a couple of weeks, reviewing and scoring those. We also have an internal committee which will be reviewing some of those, particularly for the food safety and produce safety sections. And then those recommended proposals will be reviewed by the director's office for selection. And then we anticipate announcing the awards by May of 2026. So just so everybody is aware, the purpose of this grant program is to provide financial assistance to Oregon producers, ranchers, seafood harvesters, fishermen, and processors who intend to sell food produced or processed. This includes food grown, harvested, gathered, raised, caught, or processed in Oregon. two eligible entities, or what we call sponsors, under the Farm to School program in Oregon. So just a word about who those sponsors are. So in order to participate in this grant program, you do need to be working with one or more of these partnering sponsors. So that can be a school district that's providing or participating in the National School Lunch Program, can also be the National School Breakfast Program. A provider of center-based programs for children in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. So that is, so in the first example, that's most likely a school district. In the second example, that's typically a pre-K or early childhood education site like Head Start. Those are the programs that are most captured in this description. It can also be an organization that provides summer meals through the Summer Food Service Program. Um, and those are typically, for example, YMCAs or Boys and Girls Club or Kids Unlimited, organizations that are typically providing cold summer lunches. And there's a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables typically served in those. Can also be a lot of the city municipalities for parks and recreation also sponsor summer food service meals. So you could be partnering with one of those. And then a tribal school or a tribal early learning or childhood education site or other tribal youth meal programs. These do not have to be associated with any USDA federal food assistance programs like the ones you see above. So NSLP, CACFP, SFSP, those are all federal food meal assistance programs. But tribes often are not participating in those. It just really depends. So this project is actually, or I'm sorry, this grant is available to producers that are working within their own tribes or in their own tribal meal programs that do not have to be affiliated with USDA. So we have the grant materials available in both English and Spanish. The forms are most of the proposal itself is a fillable form. And we're going to talk about that because I know sometimes people have some difficulty with Acrobat. But that really is the best format for you to fill out your application. So we'll go over that. The timeline again, the grant is open right now. It closes March 31st, 2026. And the projects will most likely run from May 2026 through December 2027. So the biennium ends June 2027, but we give you an extended 6 months for your project to take place. However, all of the funding you will receive by June of 2027. So we can't disperse funds after that date of the end of the biennium, but we still expect you might be working on your projects. So you can go over all of that too. For this cycle, we do have $210,000. This grant program is on the budget reduction list for the agency. It is in the agency's base budget at $500,000, but right now, anyway, that has been reduced to $210,000. After the short session closes in early March, we will know whether there's any further available money. And if there is, we will fund more proposals. We won't open it up another cycle or expect people to reapply. We'll just choose more proposals to fund. And then there's also a matching requirement under this grant, which I'm going to go over. So I quickly went over who's available, or sorry, who's eligible, but this sort of lays it out more specifically to tell you who the types of producers that are eligible for the funds. Just one note is that any cooperative or for-profit business or nonprofit, and this can be processors or distributors, as well as tribal enterprises, but they must source not less than 51% Oregon produced product for the purposes of this program. So basically what that means is that if they're going to be selling a a product through this project to a school, for example, it needs to be at least 51% Oregon sourced ingredients. So that is a change that was made last biennium. Um, and that doesn't mean that you can't be a processor or a distributor that offers non-Oregon products. It just means for the purpose of this grant program, you need to be meeting that requirement. So these are some of the other kind of eligibility pieces. You must be registered to conduct business in Oregon. So that you do have to have an Oregon business license. If it's not current, we just need you to renew it within, within a month or so of starting. So it's something we will check and ask you to do right away. You need to be in good standing with the Oregon Secretary of State, not owe back taxes. And you must have an acceptable performance in ODA programs. So if you've had other grants or support from ODA, it's expected that you've completed those or you've managed those properly. You will need a food safety plan or an on-farm food safety plan or licensure for this project. So you have to be essentially working towards that. And so it doesn't mean that you need to have all of the check boxes for food safety met, but you do have to at least have a plan in place or have maybe even participated in some of our education workshops, particularly around produce safety. And a lot of producers that apply do typically have that certification of being in those produce safety classes. So but that is something we'll want to make sure is in place. And then you do need a school partner. Even if you're new to selling to schools, you do need someone that you do need that should really say sponsor here, but you do need a sponsor that you're going to, at least one sponsor that you're going to work with on your project. So we'll go over the letter of intent. So for the purpose of this program, intend to sell is defined as a person or farmer or producer who has a history of selling food products to schools, or you're currently selling food products to schools, or you do not currently sell food products to schools, but you plan to do so in the future. So we really allow for any producers that, want to expand their sales. Maybe they've had a few school accounts and now they want to build off those. Or they're new to schools. And so we allow those kind of on that spectrum or arc of sales with schools, those experiences. So all producers are essentially eligible. So so these are some of the examples of how the funding might be used, but if you're new, it might help you start your aggregation capacity to sell Oregon products to schools. It could help you increase the use of Oregon agricultural products or agricultural ingredients in a product. Obviously the funds are used for machinery and equipment or infrastructure updates. And so that might help you modernize or help you acquire a piece of technical equipment that might help you with developing a value-added business. And then also anything that's, simply grown and pulled out of the ground and harvested and packed and sorted or cleaned and handled and packed and sorted also qualifies. So it does not have to be only processed products. It can be fresh, unprocessed as well. These are some examples of some of the some of the eligible items that we have funded under this program. So what's unique about it is that it does allow funds to be used for production-based purposes and activities. A lot of times grant programs really only allow for activities that occur post-harvest, but this is unique. It's really one of a kind. I don't know of any other program really like this in the country right now. So that does mean that we can fund things like agricultural water infrastructure. We can fund things like seeders and transplanters, cultivators. We can also fund things like high tunnels and greenhouses. So some of those those things that you need for production purposes are allowed. Also includes things like washing and pack stations, on-site cold storage, anything for, processing, harvesting and handling, packing or labeling, packaging as well would also qualify. This is a list of the ineligible items. I would say just the big ones here to pay attention to are, no refrigerated vehicles, no fishing vessels, no tractors. So no big item pieces of infrastructure. It's a small grant program, so unfortunately we can't allow those big ticket items. It can't pay for any indirect or overhead costs. So that's with the exception of labor. So we'll talk about that. Also does not allow you to purchase things that are not reusable. So, I mean, it does, for example, like totes and bins that you're going to wash and reuse if you're a grower, those are fine, but not essentially non-consumables, or not consumables. Those are not eligible. Other things like product research and development, for example, that's not an allowable cost under this either. And then marketing materials and advertising, things like that are not eligible for this grant program. I did mention that there's a matching fund requirement, and this is tiered based on your experience of selling to the sponsors that are part of the Farm to Child Nutrition program. So if you have no experience selling to schools, there's a 10% matching requirement. If you have more than 5 years, then it's 20% matching requirement, and 15 if you're between that. So what are matching funds? So matching can be provided in two different ways under this grant program. The first one is cash match. And essentially what that is cash. It's real liquid monies. So you might have your own cash that you're going to contribute. Maybe you're going to buy a piece of equipment that complements the request that you have from the state, that's going to be used for your project. So that's totally fine. It can also be equipment or infrastructure that you plan to purchase under the project. So so that's, maybe again, you're going to be making your own investments. Maybe you're going to use cash to hire a contractor, things like that. So essentially, cash is what it says it is when you're using it as matching funds. In-kind match is basically any other sort of good or commodity that's provided instead of or in substitution for cash or for money. So maybe you want to donate or not donate, but provide as match some of your own personal time towards the project, or maybe there's someone on staff, or maybe there's a contractor that you're going to work with that's going to provide some of their time or services as a matching contribution. You can also use existing equipment or the tax assessed value of an existing facility, as if it's again used for your project, you can use that as match as well. And then a person on loan from another organization or business. So, again, that can be someone who is a contractor or someone that's going to offer some of their time and services that are necessary for your project. So the application, I'm going to just walk through the different parts of the application, then we're going to take a look at it together. The proposal form essentially has these different sections to it. So the first one is just gathering information about your business and your organizational background. This is where you'll sort of describe, how long you've been in business, what your current sort of market channels are, what products you sell, where you sell them, anything that's really relevant to understanding how your business is set up and your production capacity, and market access essentially. And then if you have experience selling to schools, um, there's a section on that, and you can define, how that has been going for you. If you've made sales to schools, maybe some of the challenges, maybe some of the places where you've identified a potential opportunity to expand markets with schools. And then if you haven't sold to schools, describe what your vision is for your project of how you would get started selling to schools with the sponsor partner that you're working with. And then there's a section on your equipment and infrastructure needs where that's really your opportunity to kind of describe the nuts and bolts of the type of equipment you need and why it's relevant to meet the needs of the sponsor that you're working with. And if you have infrastructure that's needed as well. So that's that section. There is a section on business readiness and financial sustainability. And so, we don't ask you to submit any tax sensitive information like bank statements or anything like that. But what we do want to know is a little bit about your business and your cash flow and um, why you think taking on school sales is something that you're ready for. You oftentimes with wholesale markets, you do need a dual pricing strategy. If you're selling direct to consumer or retail versus wholesale. And so I think, that's something that will be the review committee would be looking for in this section. We also ask you to describe what you think the impact of your project will be on Oregon agriculture. And that can really kind of mean like, the ecosystem of anyone else that you might be working with, whether that's from your input resources, whether there's local farm and ranch suppliers that you'd be buying from and helping to support their businesses, all the way to what it is that you'd be producing that helps round out the diversity of Oregon agriculture, and school market access. So how will this what will this impact be on schools being able to purchase more local Oregon products? There's a section on defining your matching funds, where those are coming from and how those contribute to your project. And then there is a section on food safety. And if you do have food safety licensure or an on-farm or in-facility food safety plan, you can simply attach it to that section of the proposal. I think these are a little bit out of order. Okay, so I did want to talk about the intent to buy letter. So this again is a requirement, and that your sponsor or your partnering sponsor, I should say, would be preparing alongside you. So you would sit down and sort of talk about your project together, and they would fill out this intent to buy. And so this essentially identifies, who that buyer is, and what the project is really all about. Is this something they're going to be serving, once a month? Is it something they're going to be serving for the summer food program? And what is it that they're going to be intending to purchase from you? Is it fresh produce? If it is it, coined carrots? How much volume or frequency are they going to be purchasing from you? And so all of that will be defined in that letter. And they'll be asked to just describe how it's going to impact their school meal program. This is going to give kids maybe an opportunity to try something from a local producer that they haven't otherwise been able to try in their meal program. And just a reminder that it's an agreement of a good faith effort. These intent to buy letters are not legally binding contracts. So I would encourage you to have conversations about contingency with with the with the sponsor that you're working with in the event you did have a crop failure or there was something that you needed to potentially substitute for a product, or something came up and you weren't able to deliver um, on what you had originally agreed to. And this has happened. Um, so this is an example, and I apologize for how small this is, but this is a sample letter of intent to buy. This is actually in the guidelines document where you can find all the instructions for submitting your application. But this is what we would consider a complete letter of intent to buy. You know, it's got the date on it. It's on the letterhead of the sponsoring partner that you're working with. And again, you know, you're required to have at least one letter with the partner that you're working with, but you can be working with up to two or three partners. And so again, it describes here how this particular school, Valley Butte School District, just defines their goals around sourcing fruits and vegetables year round from Oregon. So what they're looking for is someone who can kind of meet their needs on in an ongoing way. And so with this agreement, they working with a farm to be able to provide fresh greens in the late summer and early fall to students and root vegetables in the winter and spring months. And so this producer is requesting seasonal extension equipment to allow them to keep perishable products fresher, longer, and package it in a convenient form for a school cafeteria. So, and then it defines here, you know, what crops that are going to be grown and sold to schools, how much is going to be sold in the time period of each type of crop, and how many students are served or reached with the program. So this is sort of what we would use as an example of a completed letter of intent. The more detail, the better, so that the committee can see how this is really going to impact the school meal program. Okay, and then in addition to that, in your application, there is a work plan where you'll describe the timeline of your project, kind of key activities, or I would call them milestone activities. So it doesn't need to be something you fill out with every single, you know, activity that you do under the grant program, but just the milestone or the significant activities need to be captured in your work plan. And then who's responsible? Is that going to be you? Is that going to be one of your employees or one of your someone that you know, partners with you in your business or your farm, or is that going to be a contractor that's going to you know, be responsible for that activity? So that's what you'll document in the work plan. And then there's a budget detail, and this is where you're going to get down into the specific items that you're requesting from the state, describing those in detail, an estimation of their cost, and then a source of a reference source for how you came up with that item. So let's go ahead and let me show you where some of this is. And then with the remaining time, I do have some examples of some successful projects, but I want to make sure that we get to questions. So we might just go through those quickly and then come back if we need to. So once you, I'm going to switch screens here, but once you go to the website, you should be able to see the Farm to School program on ODA's webpage here. And when you page down to the 2025-2027 Oregon Farm to School Equipment Infrastructure Grant Program, where you can read about the purpose of it and who it's trying to help. Down here past the timeline section, you will find the application materials in English, and then you'll find the application materials here in Spanish. And so what you'll want to do is make sure that you read through the Farm to School Producer Equipment and Infrastructure Grant Guidelines. This is really, and that's right here, but this is really the detailed document that describes how we expect you to come up with your project and proposal, and really gets down into those detailed questions about how to apply. So each of the sections of the guidelines are automatically linked. So if you wanted to say, look at the application checklist, you could click on that and it would take you to that page. And then at the bottom of the guidelines, you can return to the table of contents to go back to a section that you want to review. So that's the guidelines, and that's where we recommend you start is to read through the guidelines before you start filling out your application. So once you've done that, you can go to your proposal form here. Now, this is an Acrobat reader file, and it is our preferred application form. So what we would suggest that you do is you make sure that your Acrobat reader is current. Okay. And once you open it, it's going to open in your web browser. And so once you do that, you're going to want to open it in your web browser, and then you're going to want to download it. So you make sure you download it before you start filling it out. That's going to be really critical. So go to um, your little download symbol up on your menu tab under your web browser, and save it to your hard drive or wherever you need to do that. So once you save it, go back out to your desktop and open it from that location. Oops, I gotta figure out how to get back there. Okay, so I saved it here. You get to see all my messy desktop. And that's where you're gonna want to make sure you go to where you saved it on your actual computer to start filling it out. Otherwise, if you fill it out in the web browser, it will not save any of your information. So here's the Acrobat Reader fillable form. And so you'll just fill this out and it automatically populates. Okay. So you'll want to make sure that you fill this out completely. Don't leave any of these required fields blank. You may or may not be the grant contact. Maybe you've got a staff or somebody or an employee that's going to be your grant contact. Make sure you fill these out separately. So we need in this section here, the business that's going to be the fiscal manager of the program, the fiscal organization. So that's who's going to receive the funding, who's going to be registered with ODA and have the contract with ODA. But the grant contact may be different. That may be somebody on your staff that's going to be overseeing the project, right? And be responsible for implementing it. So make sure to notice those differences here, right? Applicant email, that's you as the fiscal or whoever you're working with that's going to actually receive the funding from the state. But the grant contact email might be someone, again, that's going to be the coordinator on site. After that, there's a series of check boxes. I'm not going to go through these, but these are sort of eligibility screenings. So you basically need to, for some of these, you have to be, this is determining the eligibility of your project. So make sure you fill out all of these completely. And then some of this is, again, just us kind of gathering information about your project and getting some background information. Okay, so when you get to these following pages, I would say on page 5, this is the type of, this section here, I would fill this entire section out last. First write your proposal and then write your executive summary based on your proposal. I think that oftentimes, we don't know exactly what this project is going to be until you start thinking about it and preparing the different sections of the application. So do your executive summary last, as well as these fields here about your funds requested. You'll want to fill out your budget tables first before you do before you complete this page here. The next few pages just provide these fields where you can, again, I went over these earlier, but where you can answer these questions. And please just make sure to pay attention to the minimum word counts and maximum word counts for these sections. It's important that the evaluation committee receive enough information about your proposal so that they can so that they have enough information to really judge the merits of your project. So please make sure to meet those word requirements. So that's all these sections down here. And then once you get to the budget, okay, once you get to the budget, this is important that you make sure to fill out all of your budget tables as accurately as possible. And what I would suggest you do, because we're required to use these fillable forms, is that you actually do your budget in another in a worksheet, or sorry, in a Google sheet or an Excel file. And I know it's time consuming and it's probably a pain, but then I would copy those tables over to this proposal form. I think that's probably the best way to do it, because you're probably using your own systems for preparing your budgets. And this template is really not intended for, say, adding up or subtracting, although it is designed to do that. It's not always foolproof. So I always recommend starting from a budget you've already created and filling in the form when you're ready to do so. So, one thing to note about the personnel costs is that you are able to ask for labor costs towards the project, and you can also use match for it as well. So, let's say the farm manager is going to work 30% on the project, and that's over, about a year and a half. And they're going to request $25,000, or sorry, the total cost would be $25,000. Um, but you're going to only request 20,000 of that from the state. And the remaining 5,000 is going to be what you provide in matching funds. Okay, so you're able to use labor as an in-kind match. So you would document that down here in your matching. And so your expense category is personnel. Your description is farm manager, in kind, labor on project. And you're going to bring $5,000 of their time in kind towards the project. So that's just an example of how you would sort of fill these projects out or these budget tables out. In the other budget tables, it actually has again the same sort of format where you would list here a barrel washer. You're looking for one. They're $800. Your total estimate is well, yeah, let's say you're going to get two. Your total estimate is 1,600, and you're only going to request funding for one barrel washer. Okay. And your source is, you want to put a source here. Let's say that's, I don't know, concentrates. I don't even know if they sell barrel washers. I don't think they do, but let's just say concentrates farm supply store is going to sell you a barrel washer. You're going to want to put the source. That can be a PO, or it can be an actual website where you identified that estimation of cost. But you do have to make sure to put your estimates where you determined your estimates in here. Okay, so then what you would do in this case is you would look at that balance and identify that you are matching. Let's see, you're going to match here with a piece of equipment, one barrel washer, and you're going to bring $800 cash to that. Okay, so that's sort of how these tables go. And again, I would recommend you do this in a different file before you bring it over to the fillable form for consistency and security of you filling this out because I have talked to many people who've lost their application because they were kind of filling it out as they went rather than doing it all at once from another file. Okay, so that's the application form. Let me just double check. Yeah, that's essentially it. And let's go back to the let's go back to the slide deck here. So basically, once you have all of your materials completed, that's your proposal form, your budget detail. Oh, I didn't go over the work plan. Let's see, is that in here? Yeah, so the work plan, is also in that fillable form, right? And I kind of mentioned this already, but again, you're just going to put the time frame that, the major milestone. So let's say it's, install wash and pack station. Um, that's a major major part of your project. You don't need to list out every little detail of getting your wash and pack station ready. So like let's say you were going to like pour cement, you're going to get your plumbing done. It's really just those highlights. And so let's say by September 2026 you're going to get that done, and the responsible person is your farm manager. So again, this is just kind of hitting the highlights. We want to have enough detail in here. So again, the review committee knows that you've thought through, is this a realistic time frame for you to accomplish all the tasks in your project? So you want to have enough detail in there so it's clear what you're going to do, who's going to do it, and when will it be done. But again, you don't need to list every single phone call you're going to make or every single trip to a farm store or something like that. Okay, so we talked about your letters of intent to buy. Also at the bottom of your proposal form is an attestation certification. So basically what you need to do here is this is just a signature from you basically stating that everything you've provided in this proposal form is true to the best of your knowledge. And so again, we will be checking all applications for eligibility, but it is important that you do sign and click this box. I've had to actually go back to many applicants who did not check the box on the attestation form. So please, again, just make sure you have read through this carefully and check every field to make sure you've completed it. Okay, so I've got a few, I think I'm going to stop here because I want to make sure there's time for questions. If you want to talk about a few examples of projects that were funded in the past 5 or 6 years, we do have a few slides on that, but I want to make sure people have time um, to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just pause right here and open up the lines if people do have questions to go ahead and ask them.
I have a question about the school piece. In the beginning of your presentation, you were kind of going over the different types of qualifying schools. Currently, at my business, we've been partnering with the local schools in our district for the last 6 or so years. They have like pantries, and so we've been providing food to the pantry that then is distributed to the community in the area. Would that qualify, or would we need to work directly with the food services director there to?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, this program is right now anyway, the only eligible sponsors are those that are providing meal programs within the within those sites. So the food, a food banking pantry where, food is distributed out broadly to the community, unfortunately would not be an eligible project. You could still partner with that school, but if they could be, trying some of your produce maybe once a month in the salad bar, or somehow making sure that it is purchased within their meal program, um, that would be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask another another
Go
question
ahead.
in regards to, so like the scope piece and the type of projects that would fall under the scope of this grant. Um, so we're exploring the idea right now. We lack adequate, I'd say, like storage and um, processing space
Uh-huh.
for our products. And so we have a detached garage that we were thinking about converting into a usable farm, um, like wash and pack,
Mhm.
storage space. And looking at the grant, it seems like it would fall under that sort of project, might fall under the scope, but
Yeah.
I was wondering if you
That
could give me a, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
so if you're gonna use an existing, so the
We want to
funds
use the
can't be,
existing, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
the funds can't be used to purchase any new land or new buildings or new construction. But it can be something like where you've got an existing warehouse or a garage or a lean-to, something like that, or a shed where it has kind of it has sort of the structure that is already there, that you
Mhm.
could then modify or even retrofit or upgrade to to what you need for your project. So something like installing new floors, even a new wall, that's fine. Um, I mean, we've had projects before where we've had, somebody build on to the outside of a wall,
Mhm.
and that passed the muster. So, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, you could, convert that to a wash and pack station, storage. You could do dry storage. You could do cold storage there, and that's definitely something that has been funded in the past.
Okay. Yeah, that's basically what our what we're thinking. Should we apply for this grant and have the all the adequate materials? So thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to just wrap up then. I think I'll quickly go over these remaining slides. So we just a note about application submission. So all the application materials need to be received by 5 p.m. on March 31st, 2026. You can drop off your application to the Salem, our headquarters office down in Salem. And when you go in the front door there is a front office where you can leave your materials. I would suggest you put them all together in an envelope and address them to me. And so I would, make sure to have a labeled envelope with all of your application materials in it. That is the best way to make sure nothing gets lost or misplaced. Um, if you were going to mail it, it does need to be received by 5 p.m. on March 31st. So just making sure you get that in the mail early. But the best way to submit it is through our FTP, which is a secure file transfer. It stands for file transfer protocol. And that is, let me see, I'll pull that up. That is actually, the instructions to do that are in the guidelines. So if you go to submission details, um, you'll want to label your files following this convention here for the proposal form and your letters of intent to buy. And then you will upload those to our file transfer protocol. So this is right here on page 14 are the instructions about how to do that. So you'll go to this website here, and you don't need a username. You just enter your name and address and phone number, and then it'll give you the option of uploading files. One thing I would make sure to do is in step 4 here in the comment box, because we use this file transfer protocol for a lot of different reasons, you'll just want to make sure to direct it to farm to school. That way, we don't have to open each submission separately from one another. And then once you do that, you'll get a note on your browser page. It says file has been successfully sent. And I believe you can upload more than one file at a time. If you can't, just go back in and enter, and then just submit the second file. But you should have 2 files to submit, so it's not too many. Okay, so that's submission. Let me know if you have any questions about that. And then just to kind of quickly go over what are some attributes of a successful project. Again, being very specific about your project. A lot of times what I see where people start to kind of lose the evaluation committee is when they try to do too much on their farm. I mean, farms are already very complicated systems. There's always a lot of different projects on the farm. And I would really recommend that you get very specific and focused about what it is that you're asking the state for funding for, and how that directly ties into the demand or need that you've identified with your sponsor partner. Because a lot of times I think because, these grants come along so infrequently that a lot of times producers want to try to get as many of their kind of activities and projects going or funded. They tend to ask for too much, and they start to lose the evaluation subcommittee on how these sort of adjacent projects really tie into the core purpose of the project. So make sure you do your research on the school market with your partner. So make sure you're identifying something, again, that there is in high demand with them. Know how frequently they want it. Know exactly how the form that they want it in. Because if they do want it, washed and packed or chopped or diced, that's going to make a big difference in the types of equipment you're going to need. Make sure you know about their expectations around volume, because in order for you to meet that production capacity, you're going to need storage, you're going to need good organization and packing or packaging. So make sure you're doing that research with them. And again, there are obviously lots of different types of, I'm just going to use barrel washers as another example, but make sure your budget is realistic. We've seen requests come in for barrel washers over $2,500, $3,000 from $400 to $3,000. So, make sure that you are, really doing your equipment and infrastructure budget analysis in a way that again just closely ties to what you need. And that is, I think, complementary to all of your other existing systems, your other equipment systems. These are just a couple of examples. I know we're at time, but these are just 3 different types of producers we have funded in the last 5 or 6 years. But this is Deck Family Farm. They are a diversified farm, but mostly produce small livestock. and they are down in Junction City. And they had been working with school districts for a couple years before they applied for the Farm to School program. And they began selling in 2018 and decided they wanted to expand to a few different types of buyers. Some of those were in their region, and one of those was actually outside of their region, up here in the Portland area. And they had wanted to actually increase their school accounts so that they could get up to selling over 50% of their processed poultry. And so what they asked for was some pieces of conventional equipment for like scalding and grinding. But then they also made some infrastructure updates to this existing building you see down here in the right-hand corner that actually then helped them meet the 20,000 bird exemption, or sorry, the 20,000 bird license for ODA. So they were able to, by getting the grant, they were able to expand their markets, actually to, expand their markets to schools, and then actually make different types of products, different cuts and different ground poultry for schools, as well as come into compliance with the state licensure for 20,000 birds. So it was actually a really, really great project in that way. Fry Family Farms, they're a very large organic producer down in Southern Oregon. And they already sell to quite a few schools. And what they did was they needed to work on their season extension due to the kind of the shoulder seasons. So they put in some heated greenhouses. And so these funds actually help fund, I think they requested 3 heating systems, but we only actually funded 2. So that's another thing to note, is that ODA may actually reserves the ability to fund a portion of projects, but always gives the potential grantee an opportunity to modify the scope of their project if that's the case. So anyway, they were awarded for 2 instead of 3 of the heating systems. And they had given us some pretty accurate projected sales increases for their school markets. And then the final one is is actually one of the food hubs operating here in Oregon. It's the Gorge Farmer Collective out in Hood River. And what we did with them was we, again, because they had a refrigerated van or refrigerated truck, but they didn't have a lift gate on it. And that was one of the critical pieces of infrastructure that they really needed ergonomically, but also for safety reasons, so that they could do their cross-stocking more efficiently. So the ODA funding funded that, as well as a mobile refrigeration unit here you see in the spotted picture, and then a new door installation here on the side of the wall up here by this blue cross-docking section. And so again, this was an example of funding one of those processor distributors type of entities. So not a producer, but someone who's aggregating for producers. All right. Any remaining questions before we close the call? Okay, so I'm gonna put the email address in the chat box. And this is our general grant. Let's see, farm to school grant at oda.oregon.gov. So as you're working on your proposals, please feel free to reach out to that email address and let us know what questions you have or if you need some help. And then again, we will have an office hour on March 9th, just bringing back up the timeline table here so you can kind of see what's next. So if you do have more questions, you can always come to that office hour on March 9th. Those links to those virtual calls are on our website, where you can find that, find the information that you can call in from Teams. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the call. Thank you all for joining today. And yeah, good luck on your proposals. I'm excited to see your projects come in.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Ellie.
Mhm.